Shannon and I are looking forward to spending some time with you today to kind of connect some of the coaching and literacy pieces to a lot of our MiLEAP family engagement framework, our 35I grant, and some of the other things that we have going on to start to make those connections to see where you are a part of it if you don't know that already. So I'm going to hand it over to Shannon, and we're going to trade spots here so I can keep an eye online, and she has got a connecting activity for you.
Okay, hello. All right, so we have been moving toward a relational leadership approach with everything. So we're going to start off with a well-being activity. So here's your first question to start us off. What was your favorite childhood toy, or just a childhood toy that you remember well? And then I'll give you a second. And those of you who are virtual can put it in the chat, and then Melissa will monitor that, and then we'll go around the room, and you can always pass if you do not want to share. So I'm going to introduce you to our team. So I'm Shanon Everett. I'm the manager of our Family Partnerships Unit at MiLEAP, and then Melissa Manko is here with us. The rest of our team is not here today, but we have our director, Johnny Tayton. We have another consultant that's the counterpart to Melissa is Al Thomas, and then we have Tawana Alamu. She is our early literacy and family engagement specialist, and we report to Deputy Director Roland Lillard, and then our MiLEAP director is Dr. Beverly Walker-Graffia, and she reports to the governor. So if you're familiar with the Michigan Department of Education, Dr. Beverly and Dr. Rice are like equals there. So I want to introduce you to some of our MiLEAP family partnerships teams that we have started. I guess I should back up and say we have been a team since August of last year, so not even a full year that we have been formed working on family engagement at the state level. Before that, Melissa, Al, Johnny, and I came from the Michigan Department of Education. We were moved over to MiLEAP. Tawana is new, but we are a very new team. Even though we all came, most of us came from MDE, we were in different roles there. So we are very new. We had the framework that I'm going to introduce to you in a little while. That was out, but we really didn't have a team to support that framework. So we have started some of our family engagement committees. So the education partnerships team is our team that I just showed on the previous slide. And then we have our state partners team. These are state employees who really work in different areas, could be early childhood, higher education, who have family engagement embedded in their jobs. So we meet every month to talk about best practices, and just to make sure that we're continuing that communication. We also have people from the Michigan Department of Education that's on that team. And then we have an advisory team. This team is really there to help us and advise the work. We meet quarterly, and this team consists of people from higher education and ISDs, early childhood. We have some families on this team to help drive the work too, because we definitely want to bring that family voice in too. And for those of you who are not familiar with MiLEAP, I just wanted to introduce to you some of what MiLEAP does. So we have 3 offices at the MiLEAP department. We have early childhood, higher education, and education partnerships. So education partnerships is where the family partnerships unit is. And we kind of bring together all of that because family engagement is prenatal all the way through post-secondary. So we kind of bring together all of those offices. And then there are goals, our MiLEAP goals as a whole, and I won't read all of those to you, but if you have any questions about MiLEAP, because we started in December a year ago, so just over a year. So I know it's a new state department, so if there are any questions, I can pause here and see if I can answer them. So why does family engagement matter to those of you 35A coaches? Because family engagement is a primary predictor for a child's academic success. It improves classroom dynamics. It increases student-teacher relationships. It improves cultural competence, improves attendance rates, which I know is a big priority for most of the state, right? making sure that we have chronic absenteeism issues everywhere across the state. And it can be the key to improving dropout rates and fostering improved educational aspirations. It's very, very important. And I do want to mention 35A. So Melissa and I were funded previously 35A, so we're very familiar with the state grant, and now we're 35I. So my Family Engagement Centers is still Section 35, which is all literacy based. So we're going to dive into the framework in a second. So before we do, I want to see who is familiar with the framework and how familiar are you? So those of you in the room, just you can put your hand up. Those of you on the chat, you can type in your number. So the My Family, Michigan's Family Engagement Framework was created, it started back in 2017. So a lot of the research that is in the framework came from back then. But it was released in 2020, literally the week the world shut down, the very first week of March, which was the week that I started at MDE as a early literacy and family engagement consultant. We launched this framework and everything shut down. It is created for prenatal through post-secondary for educators and practitioners. It is not meant for families. Eventually, we would really like to have a companion for families, but the language used is really for educators. I do want to mention this is the first edition because currently we are gathering some of our people from our advisory team that I mentioned before to start a work group, and we will be diving into this framework and looking at, because that research is from 2017 to 2020, and we know COVID has changed our practices. So we're really going to start looking at that and making it relevant to today and updating a lot of that. So that's going to happen this summer in hopes that we can launch a new revised version in the fall. And this is the first of many resources to aid in engaging families. When we get to our website later, you'll see there are a lot more resources that are available to you. So our framework is based on our 5 principles. And the first one at the very top is relationships are the cornerstone of family engagement. So we really are looking at relationships as first and foremost. And just like we did that well-being activity at the beginning, we believe that relationships are first and foremost in every setting. So when we revise our framework, we're really going to start looking at that aspect more predominantly and how we are building all of those relationships with all of our partners, because it is not just families and schools, it's also community, it's everybody. So when the framework was completed, we looked at moving more from family involvement to family engagement. So having an individual responsibility to shared responsibility and partnership with those families. And we are really now moving forward to our revision, moving more towards involvement to engagement to partnership, because we really want to call it a partnership with the family, because we are all equal. It is not us telling families how to engage, it's a partnership. So looking at families as a strength-based relationship and collaborative, it's not just random acts of literacy night, it's systemic. It's allowing those families to help plan those activities with you. It's not just add-on one-time projects, it's ongoing. And it's not just compliance, because I know a lot of programs, especially grants, have a family engagement component, but it's more than just complying to that. It is ownership and continuous improvement that happens. So I want to point out at the end, the back of our framework, we have this high impact strategy, and we have it broken down from early childhood, elementary, all the way on to post-secondary. So if you are working in an elementary school, you could look at the section on elementary and see where you fall. Are you doing things in your building that are more low impact, moderate, or high impact? And if you are lower or moderate, it gives you suggestions on how to move to the higher impact So I want to start going into the 35I My Family Center grant, which in a minute Melissa's going to dive even deeper. But before we had this grant, we really were seeing and still are seeing a lot of silos happening, right? Where we have schools and we know we have Title I funding, GSRP funding, all of these grants. And a component of them is engaging families. And then we have our Great Start collaboratives, our 32P, 32P6, which is literacy, 32P4, which home visiting, all of those. And then we have, we had previously the literacy hubs, and I don't know if everybody here had heard of the literacy hubs. That was started with some preschool development grant birth to 5 funding. We created some literacy hubs across the state to really help with those birth to 5 literacy pieces because they don't have literacy coaches everywhere for that age, right? Because some of the ISD coaches are working with GSRP, but not all of them are. So we really wanted to look at these 3 pieces and bring them more together. And so 35I was created, the My Family Engagement Centers. And within those family engagement centers, we assumed the responsibility of the birth to 5 literacy support network hubs that were birth to 5 and now are birth through 5th grade. So these centers are really going to support all the way through 5th grade and then bridging that pre-K through elementary years too.
All right, so I'm going to go into a little bit more detail on 35I. There were some things that we highlighted, but I'm going to go a little bit out of order here and jump down to the third from the bottom. 120,000 of the 350,000 each year for the next 4 years is allocated to the existing literacy hubs that used to go through 3rd grade and now are expanded up through 5th grade. So within each center, which I will describe a little bit better in just a moment, the literacy hubs still exist, or if it's a region where the literacy hubs were not necessarily a strength, that's being rebuilt. And some connections and partnerships are being made to make that more of a presence. So then I will hop back up to the top. The 4-year grant follows the fiscal calendar October 1st through September 30th. So we are partially into year 2. So here is the interesting little tidbit. Shanon mentioned that a lot of the coordinators were not hired until August of last year. The grant actually started before that, so luckily the funds roll over because although we're like halfway into year 2, technically and logistically, the centers are really wrapping up their first year of doing some needs-based assessments, doing some partnership outreach, building those relationships, and strengthening ties with family-facing professionals. So what it looks like on paper versus what's happening in the ground, as it is with a lot of government work, are 2 different things. The staffing includes a region lead, so we're going to get to the region map in just a moment. The state follows the same map that it does for other initiatives that we'll show you in just a moment. There are 10 different regions of the state, multi-county regions. Each region has a region coordinator that is the grantee that runs the funds to the other participating counties or ISDs. So you'll see, for instance, Ashland. Metro Detroit, Region 10 is Wayne, Oakland, Macomb. It runs through Melissa Wilson at Wayne ISD, or Wayne RISA, pardon me. But she is the person that's going to fan out the funds and programming to the other participating counties. And then there are most likely in each region, there are also support staffs from literacy coaches that are highly involved. Some might not be. It's apples to oranges, region to region, as far as the connections that have been made and the strengths and the holes as they're building. They have ISD representation from each of the participating counties. They're developing a system of support, so it is indeed called the My Family Centers. We don't prefer that language. It's the language that was given to us through 35I. It's a system of support. It's not an actual center go-to physical spot. So they're building a system of support for family-facing professionals now, hoping that towards the end of the 4 years, it's also directly to families, but it's just, again, building that system along the way, and that's where we are with that right now. They're launching activities, including but not limited to training, coaching, TA assistance, resource development, and online learning modules. So you'll see a little bit later on, different regions in the state are working on different things based on the highest need in that area. I think I got to most of it. They're working extremely hard right now on the building community partnerships piece of it, and pushing into early childhood, K-12, and post-secondary spaces. So making sure that that P20 space is well-rounded and well-connected. A lot of the coordinators came in with some early childhood background, and we've tried to even the playing field as far as making sure that there are post-secondary folks at the table, career and ed tech, and then K-12. And our team has really been trying to push hard as well on presenting or having tables or being at meetings where all of those spaces are represented as well to help make those connections. And again, they're measuring impact data to inform future decisions. So that is just an always occurring event to inform where to go next. This is actually our My Family Center 35I. I wouldn't call it a logo, but a representation of the work as far as families at the center of our work and relationships, and then all of the different participants that are at the table ideally. That's not always the case depending on what's going on in each region, but as much as possible, those are the people that they are looking to be the players. And then those are the results we're looking for over here. And you can see that between schools, community partners, all of those, the coaches have a space. So we are here today to connect you either with your coordinator or region if you're not already, or to answer any questions, thoughts, concerns that you have as you're listening to some of this. Some of our regional partnerships that we're working on, and we've highlighted other organizations because this is some but not limited to who they're looking for outreach with. And I would say at this point, all regions have done a really excellent job as far as the progress they've made. Some started with some connections in place, and others really just started from scratch. So depending on which region in the state you're talking about, they've all just made amazing progress in the year that this has happened. Well, we're coming up on a year. We're hosting a My Family Retreat that will be the second one, so I guess we could call it annual, for our region coordinators and their support staff next week. So some of them were not hired at this point last year. So we're really excited to have everyone in person and a year of history behind us and come back and reflect and where are we going from here. So we're really very excited about that. This is a poster banner that we like to use when we're presenting or we have a vendor table somewhere because it's a fairly nicely well-rounded representation of the work. You'll see up in the right-hand corner is the region map that I was talking about. And we'll go into, there's a slide in there with different region coordinators and what counties that will help you connect with that a little bit more in just a minute. There's the systems logo graphic that I showed you. Just some different research on family engagement, our 5 framework essentials, and then a little bit about our centers and some resources down at the bottom. So Shanon will get to a couple of resources in a little while. Some you'll see say MDE, Michigan Department of Education, some say MiLEAP. To be quite transparent, we all came from MDE. I came from the literacy realm. Shanon came from early childhood. Al, my counterpart that oversees 5 of the 10, I oversee the other, came from Title I. So some of the resources were created with us at MDE, and there's some joint ownership there and some hoo-ha politics that we won't get into. But it's a little bit confusing sometimes because when you look at it, you'll think, well, she showed me this from MiLEAP. Why does this say MDE? And that is why. So Regions 1 through 5, you'll see who the grantee county is. Those are overseen by Al Thomas, my coworker, who is not here today. And then regions 6 through 10 are myself. And honestly, they all talk to both of us, but we have detailed contact with those 5. And then they all have pretty excellent connections with one another at this point. It's really built into a healthy community of sharing on connections, or wow, I heard you talk about this, or I heard you're doing mini grants in your district, or I heard you're doing family partnership toolkits. Tell me more about that or how you did that. And they really do a lot of sharing. So that is something that is helpful to them just as much as Al and I are. And then there's your list as far as contacts for each region. And we will happily go back to this at the end if you want to take a look at it again. And then thinking a little bit more on some of the MESA literacy essential pieces that connect coaches to our work. So Annie Spears created several of these next couple of slides. So I'm going to be fully transparent and give her the credit for that right out of the gate. They're very helpful in connecting, obviously, Literacy Essential 10, family engagement, and its importance. And I will go through each body of work that she made the connections with that kind of help drive home, like, why are you listening to us today, and how does this pertain to your work? In the early childhood realm, you can see the connection here, the pre-K Essential 10. She lists page 28, focusing on families, caregivers, and community partners. The elementary essentials listed as well. She gives page 39 in the essentials. Essential 10, collaboration with families, caregivers, and the community in promoting literacy. And then this is a highlight from the school-wide, center-wide organizational practices called out on page 29 under enabling conditions. When the organizational practices were revised, the first 2 were around families, communities, and building positive relationships, which is the work of the Family Engagement Center. Without those components, the other practices would not be as effective. This is where we help support the coaches in implementing those components. So it's taking those pieces and braiding them into what's already going on. A lot of times when we talk about this work, it's interpreted, especially in the K-12 world, as like, you're throwing like another something at us. You're throwing like a flavor of the month or another piece on my plate that's already way too full. It's really not. It's really intentional, being intentional about what you're already doing. So it's just tying in some different things and approaching things a certain very specific way, and putting that final piece of the puzzle in by looping in families to get a little bit more of the support that you're looking for. The organizational practices for both math and literacy highlight the value of impact and family collaboration. And then she lists them out in several bullets on this slide. And then I am going to turn it over to Shannon to go into a little bit more of the Lit Hub work and some of the early childhood pieces. Some of the regions are doing some family partnership toolkits. I know Kristen Chisholm in Region 8 out of Berrien is working on those and doing a great job. She unrolled part of it through some GSC support, and I know that she has a little bit of that background, so she incorporated some of the pieces that she already had as far as building that out. And that, again, that's just such a strong natural partnership anyway, that she's looked into expanding some of those pieces up into like K-5. Region 10 has newcomer, family newcomer, and then Region 8, and then Region 10, Metro Detroit. It would be the partnership county, Oakland. Thank you, Ashley.
Yeah, I just want to mention that every region is different and their needs are different. So a lot of their initiatives are very diverse. Like, it's hard to keep up with everything that they're all doing because they're all doing amazing work, but they all are so different. Like, some are really focusing on chronic absenteeism. Some of them are focusing on training people who work with families on strengthening families framework, and it's just such a variety. So I just suggest you reach out to your regional person and your coordinator and see what specifically is happening and how you can get involved. I know you already are, Ashlyn, because I know you're coming to our retreat next week. Okay, so I mentioned earlier that originally we had funding to start these literacy hubs, Birth to Five, and that's kind of where the My Family Center started with literacy work and expanded from there once we got state legislative funding. So originally, we really, our literacy hub work was based around the literacy essentials and things that were already happening in our state around literacy, like talking is teaching, because talking is teaching is specifically for the early childhood ages. But everything kind of built on from there. So I just wanted to point that out. And then we're going to talk a little bit about Talking is Teaching. I hope, is everybody in the room at least familiar with Talking is Teaching? Our Great Start collaboratives, most of the Great Start collaboratives, I know a couple of regions are doing their own thing that's very similar, but everywhere you should see, I see these billboards everywhere in my region too, with Talking is Teaching. So the centers are going to continue to promote Talking is Teaching and working with their Great Start collaboratives and Great Start family coalitions on that. But Talking is Teaching started with the Too Small to Fail company or corporation, and Michigan is one of the states who have adopted it statewide. Some of the things that the literacy hubs within the regions are doing is promoting things that are already happening, like the Read, Write, Roar. We had Annie come in and talk to all of our coordinators a couple months ago about this work, and everywhere is promoting this and getting families in their regions to know this is happening. So we really are trying to create those networks and those partners at the state level too, not just regionally, but with us, so that we can bring in people that can talk to our coordinators in our monthly community practice to share what's happening. So if you have any ideas, or if some of you have suggestions or want to come and talk to our coordinators, that's a good way, because we have virtual community of practice every month. So please email Melissa or I, and we can get you connected there. So we also want to promote the birth to three essentials and the family pieces that go along with that. And then the book here, I think this is the book that Annie Spear helped write. So we have purchased all of this for our coordinators, so they're very familiar with all of the essentials, any tools that have been created. Last year, Annie came to our retreat, and we shared all of that with them. They're helping us promote the new coaching essentials, the new coaching training for birth to three and pre-K essentials. So they were strategic in helping us get the word out there and choose who attended that training supported by MAISA, because we want to make sure that there are people in every region that are trained as coaches. And another resource I want to point out is a resource that Melissa and I helped create when we were at MDE in partnership with one of our TA centers. So you'll find this, there was a QR code on one of the other slides, and we can show you at the end on our website. But we created some resources for educators, for leadership, so that could be program directors, principals that are working with those educators, and then the last piece is directly for giving to families. So we took 3 of the essentials, the read alouds, abundance of reading material, and writing. So we chose those 3 because we thought those were really important to share with the families, and that was a good place to start. Also, they exist in pre-K and the K-3 essentials. So we looked at those 3 essentials, and we created these pieces to share with families at parent-teacher conferences, home visits. It's not just something to put in a backpack, but it really is something that a teacher can use to engage those families in literacy practices at home. And then the last piece that we added is like a toolkit for the teachers to use all the way from September to the end of the school year. So it breaks it down into monthly little pieces that they can put in their newsletters, on their social media, and it just gives that reminder. So if you give the family the handout on read alouds, and then you're sending home those little pieces as reminders throughout the month, it just helps. It's just a tool for the provider, home visitor, educator, whoever's working with the family to get them engaged. And I will pause there if there are any questions. This does exist in Arabic and Spanish on our website as well. I just wanted to point this out because we do want to center the whole child, and it is not just the families and the schools. It is the entire community, and the child is at the center. So I like this little graphic. And I wanted to point out that it takes all of us working with that child. And then just to briefly go over some studies and findings, there was this study that found that family engagement, especially family engagement and literacy, actually has more profound effect than poverty does on children. So I thought this was a good study to point out. And when we share the PowerPoint with you, because it should be in your resources, you can have the links to all of this too. And then this study shows that just listening to your child read aloud showed a significant increase in literacy scores. So just promoting that reading aloud at home with families together, and especially allowing your child to read to the parent.
Coming back to the theory of action, the goal is that all Michigan's children develop strong literacy skills and dispositions, which is aligned to the goal of family engagement or increased outcomes. Families are the resource and family engagement is the strategy. It's the missing piece. It's embedded in the essentials, but is often not highlighted. So the purpose today is to embed it into systems, leadership teams, district goals, the education field in general, how they interact with families, and including supporting 35A coaches to use high-impact family engagement strategies in order to improve outcomes for all families in Michigan. A coach can meet with schools and district improvement teams to implement these actions into your own goals. I know I've worked closely with one of my Region 7 coordinators that runs out of Ingham, so it's Ingham, Eaton, Clinton, and she actually spent a long time at a district data day working with coaches as they were looking through data before it fanned back out to classroom educators and talking about proactive coaching strategies as the data unrolled. So it's just connecting in partnerships to help everyone move the end goal, which is Michigan families and children being literate. Family engagement is embedded in the work of the MTSS practice profile, Title I programming, parent compacts, and informational nights, MyKIP goals, and increasing attendance and graduation rates. And again, that was part of the overarching MiLEAP goals that Shanon touched on at the beginning. Perhaps these efforts can yield even more resources by leveraging the family engagement portions. So again, it's going back to the piece that it's strategies and intentionality versus adding another something to your plate. It's the way that you do it versus it's the how. It's the how. They can be addressed in MTSS goals, Title I family involvement plans, in your MyKIP plan, or in your EWIMS plan. Family engagement is the instructional practice that is the missing piece. It's embedded in the essentials but not highlighted, so the purpose is to embed it in systems, leadership teams, districts, and teachers, within coaches, and then within our My Family coordinators, and supporting districts as they move forward. Going back to the double helix symbol resource that Shanon had talked about a few minutes ago, I'm just going to touch on a couple of things that you would see when you travel to our family partnerships page through MiLEAP. Again, when you get these slides, it's linked right in at the top. It's newly renovated, so it's updated finally after many months of work. Government process is really, really slow, so we're pretty overexcited about that at this point. You'll see the My Family framework. You'll see a 35I My Family Center FAQ that will give you a little bit more background on it. You'll see a more detailed version of the map with the regions, and then contact info for all of the MiLEAP staff and all of the My Family coordinators for each region. My Family principles and video with an overview. That part is a little bit outdated and needs to be redone, but we're getting to it. Family engagement and literacy resources. I think there were like 10 other resources reaching multilingual families and all kinds of things. And then our contact info. We are really excited after we host our retreat with the coordinators next week to roll into the summer, doing some editing on our family engagement framework and principles. So updating that a little bit. We're working with hopefully Dr. Edwards at MSU, who is hosting, and then bringing George Otero and the Relational Leadership Institute piece into it to definitely honor our top principle, which is relationships are the cornerstone. So we're looking to incorporate all of those pieces over the summer into a new resource that will be on our webpage, hopefully, if we're being really optimistic, by early fall, which probably means Christmas. And then we wanted you to stop and think about something that you might take away from today's session, whether it's a connection or a resounding thought, or a question that you want to ask, either online or in person, as you think about all of the things that we really got going on.
Well, I immediately think about how so many of our schools have their family nights
Yes.
that don't get people into the schools but aren't building any skills with those families
Yes.
for education.
Yep.
And so some of those documents and things that you're sharing, that's the place. I mean, it's a great avenue that's already happening in schools to help build capacity rather than just give everyone a fun time.
Yes. You're giving them a plate of spaghetti when you have them like right there. You can give them so much more than spaghetti.
That's one of the things we've been trying to press with the 35I grant. It's not just buying books for families. It's buying books and also showing them how to engage in literacy at home.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it's not just giving them the tools, but it's showing them how to use them.
It could be something as simple, I know Regions have done bookmarks. They've done stickers inside the book with a QR code that has strategies and contact information. It doesn't have to be a heavy lift. I mean, you can get there, but there are just such tiny things that you can do before that to just get it going on.
I'm also thinking about connection back to where you talked about MiLEAP and incorporating Essential 10 and some of the other pieces, the essentials that talk about abundant libraries for when the communities and the cultures that are in that community, connecting to your public library from that side of it. But
Yes.
if we go back to the school, the MiLEAP process for your district, Essential 10 can be put in as a strategy
Yes.
for everybody's library.
Yes,
So if you
amen.
have students that are,
Yep.
if your district's using MiLEAP as a template for your IRIPs or whatever tool you're using for IRIPs, that's a perfect connection back to your family.
Yeah. Shannon and I got going. You're triggering me. I have a resounding thought listening to you, and that is that we got going on trying to get so much information and all the connections that we saw when we were talking to you today, that takes me back to the point that we're really working on relabeling, from the relabeling of our page to the relabeling of our unit as family partnerships versus family engagement, and changing the traditional education lens of we are the givers and sit on all the knowledge to impart on you, and making it an exchange and a resource. So,
I think if you look at even the birth to three coaches and the pre-K coaches, they're not the same kind of coaches that you would have in a K-5 building. So if we all start to adjust
yes.
to a partnership,
Yep.
it's aligned with birth to three and the pre-K
Yep.
essential practices, to look at it as a partnership so that they don't feel like it's just someone talking at them. Actually,
I think talking as teaching, it hasn't been something that we've talked about, but our coordinators also have several like work groups that are subgroups that work on some different things. And I know that our literacy work group right now is specifically working on doing a family engagement and literacy crosswalk. And one of the people at the table is a really strong GSC background, and also talking about taking some of those early childhood pieces and expanding them up through 5th grade and making them age appropriate. So I know there are some things like that at work behind the scenes, but they have not come to fruition yet because we have a lot going on, but they're getting there. Or if you think about something when you're driving home or work comes up and you think about us, please feel free to reach out to anyone on our team, Shannon or myself or Al or Tawana or our director, Johnny Tayton, the coordinator contact. Okay, so there are the coordinator contact emails.